Congratulations, we win the championship by 1 point.
After Michael Schumacher hung up his helmet, he was replaced by Kimi Raikkonen in the Ferrari, who was partnered alongside Felipe Massa. Raikkonen's move to Ferrari and Juan Pablo Montoya's retirement meant that there were 2 empty seats at McLaren Mercedes, which would be filled by the double and reigning world champion Fernando Alonso, who wanted to replicate his idol Ayrton Senna, and alongside him would be the 2006 GP2 champion Lewis Hamilton, who was making his F1 debut. Renault, in response to their star driver leaving for McLaren, decided to give the up-and-coming Heikki Kovalainen a chance to fill Alonso's shoes and decided to stick with Giancarlo Fisichella in the second Renault. And now with the context set, let's look at one of the greatest and drama-filled rookie seasons in F1 history. Also, I won't be looking at each and every race, but the ones I think are prominent. And with that, let's go to round 1. Lewis qualified 4th in his first ever qualifying round, while the front row was locked out by Kimi and Fernando. When the lights went out, Kimi was getting ahead comfortably heading into turn 1, while Lewis made this move.
He's also got round Alonso! Stunning start by Lewis Hamilton!
However, as the race progressed, Fernando made the first pit stop out of the 2 McLarens, but when Lewis entered the pits, his pit stop was quicker and he comes out ahead of the 2-time world champion. However, after the first round of pit stops, Alonso had planned to go on for a longer stint, and towards the end of that stint, he was also leading the race while Kimi was in second and Lewis in third. When Alonso dived in the pits, he came out behind Kimi in second place but found himself ahead of his teammate.
Extra fuel mid-race has made all the difference. There's the experience and the wisdom of a double world champion and his crew, of course.
The race ended with Kimi winning and sharing the podium with Alonso and the rookie Lewis Hamilton. Now let's fast forward to round 4, Spain. Coming out of Bahrain, the championship looked something like this, with Kimi, Fernando and Lewis all equal on 22 points. In Spain, Massa is on pole for the 3rd time in a row ahead of Alonso, Raikkonen and Hamilton. After a poor weekend in Bahrain, Alonso goes for the attack for taking the lead from Massa.
140,000 fans, it's about to get underway, and a good start from Massa. Look at Alonso down the inside. Hamilton looks like he's got away well, and so is Kubica. Now it's side by side, Hamilton and Raikkonen. Who's going to get the job? Look at Alonso, he almost tagged Massa there. He goes wide, has he got him? Massa keeps his foot in, they touch, they run wide. Here's a chance for Hamilton, he gets in front of Alonso.
But it all goes into the gravel, and from second, Alonso is demoted to 4th. But an electrical problem for Kimi meant retirement for him and 3rd for Alonso. Massa then incurs a brief fire in his car, but even that couldn't stop him from winning the race, with Lewis second on the podium and Fernando in 3rd. And with his 4th podium, Lewis came out of Spanish Grand Prix, leading the championship in his debut season.
Working so hard for this, and to come into only my 4th Grand Prix and come out of it leading the World Championship when I'm driving with the top drivers in the world here, it's incredible.
The front row was locked out by the 2 McLarens in the Principality, where Fernando Alonso took McLaren's first pole of the season alongside Lewis Hamilton. After a while, Alonso made a small lead over his teammate, but traffic brings him closer. On lap 26, Alonso pits while Lewis leads the race. However, his team calls him into the pits before expected, which gives the lead back to Alonso. Lewis then puts pressure onto Alonso, but his team basically tells him to ease off the pace and not fight him, which might result in jeopardizing a 1-2 finish. Fernando wins in Monte Carlo and takes the championship lead, while Lewis is second on the podium. Lewis wasn't pleased about this team order because for him, it meant that Alonso was favoured by McLaren, and this then would set a tone between Lewis and Fernando's relationship at McLaren.
It's frustrating for a driver, but we have to function as a team, and slowing them down was difficult because you have to maintain concentration, but that's my job.
Also in Monte Carlo, Kimi finished 8th and took 1 point for the championship. I wonder how important this 1 point could be. After Monaco, it seemed like Lewis came to Canada with a determined mindset. During qualifying, Lewis takes his first ever pole position in his rookie season and is almost half a second quicker than Alonso.
We dialed in the car in P3 and I had an opportunity to go out and put it on pole, and this time I took the opportunity and grabbed it with both hands and did the best job I could with it.
When the race began, this happened.
And Heidfeld, there's a flag at the back, but it looks like Heidfeld's attacking Hamilton. Alonso goes to the outside as he made it. He's run wide. He's cut the corner. If he takes the advantage, which he can't, he's done what he did in Spain. He's gone for broke, and it's cost him. Alonso
Runs wide and while rejoining, almost collects Hamilton with him. After a while, Fernando does the same thing and gifts his position to Massa.
Alonso's made a mistake, and this time it's really cost him again, as Massa has dived through to take that third place, that final podium position at the moment. What is going on with Fernando Alonso?
Soon after Adrian crashes, bringing out a safety car, Alonso pits, despite the pit lane being closed, rewarding himself with a beautiful stop and go penalty. But as soon as the pit lane opens, cars dive into the pits, and here Massa makes a mistake. He goes out of the pit lane despite the red light and is black flagged from the race. And behind him, Kubica realized that the pit exit is closed, slammed on the brakes, but as soon as he does that, the pit exit opens and he is soon overtaken by Jarno Trulli. But Kubica has a quick car and is now behind the gearbox of the Toyota. But soon after, Kubica hits the wall. At 200 kmph, the impact is measured at 75 Gs. Back on track, Alonso pits and manages to stay ahead of Kimi. But then Alonso's teammate, on the other hand, is having none of it and wins his first ever Grand Prix in his 6th race of his F1 career.
Well, he's rewriting the book of what is possible in Formula One. If he can do this after 6 races, what might he achieve in the future? Lewis Hamilton wins! Surely the first of many for Lewis Hamilton. The world is at his feet.
All in all, Lewis survived a race which had 4 safety cars and only 12 cars finishing the race. And to cap off, he takes the championship lead. We are now in Indianapolis. Robert arrives having suffered just bruises and a sprained ankle. Another rookie named Sebastian Vettel also joins the grid to replace Kubica while he recovers. On the grid, we have Lewis Hamilton taking another pole. On race day, Alonso tries really hard to overtake Hamilton.
Is Alonso going to try another one of his famous runs down the outside? No, he is not.
He tries again after a few laps.
They are side by side down the pit straight in Indianapolis. The two teammates, you could put a cigarette paper between the wheels.
But it just doesn't work.
Hamilton holds his nerve.
Alonso gambles to undercut Hamilton. And that fails too. And he extends his lead. Lewis then goes on to take his second win 1 week after his first.
Absolutely stunning drive, a steely drive. Lewis Hamilton wins!
Yes, guys! Once again, you did a fantastic job.
Wrong that you and Fernando fight fair and square, despite some a request from Fernando.
Fernando wanted the team to let him pass, but the team let Lewis and Alonso fight. Okay, let's skip France and Silverstone. Kimi wins both the races. There is a lot of talking happening on the grid about Ferrari and McLaren, but it's not about the drivers, but something totally different. Back in the French Grand Prix, allegations began to surface that a document full of Ferrari's technical secrets have been passed on to McLaren's chief designer Mike Hoffman by Nigel Steffney. McLaren conducts an internal investigation and announces that the document never made its way to them, but the FIA calls them to a hearing. And the name people gave to this scandal was Spygate. Back on track, during first runs in Q3, a loose wheel nut causes Hamilton's tyre failure and he crashes. The same problem is found in Alonso's tyre, but luckily he was saved by the session stopping. On race day, Lewis lines up 10th on the grid while Kimi is on pole, ahead of Alonso and Massa. While the formation lap was about to end, Spiker's Winkelhock drove into the pits for wet tyres, but it wasn't raining. Anyway, the lights go out and Kimi is leading. But while the cars make their way to the final chicane to start the second lap, the downpour begins. Kimi tries to enter the pits but slips. And everyone else dives in for wets. Except, you guessed it, Winkelhock. The German driver making a debut leads in his home race. But even the wet tyres cannot handle the rain, and one by one, the cars go off in turn 1 of Nürburgring. First Button, then Lewis, then Sutil, Rosberg and Scott Speed. With the track undrivable, the safety car is called. Meanwhile, a tractor is called to recover the cars in turn 1 but is hit by another Toro Rosso, and in total we have 6 cars sitting in the gravel. But Lewis managed to keep his engine running and directs the recovery crew to put him back on track, and he begins his race, a lap down on the leaders. The race is red flag, and when the grid forms again, Winkelhock finds himself in pole, but when the green flag is waved, Winkelhock cannot do anything to hold back Massa and Alonso. The Brazilian is suffering from vibration from his tyres and is soon within the Spaniard's clutches. And with laps running out, Alonso makes his move and just manages to pass Massa and eventually win the race. But Massa is not happy about his second place finish. Also, this is the first time that Hamilton finished 9th and couldn't manage to gain points, but until round 10, Lewis was in the podium every time from Australia to United Kingdom. Now let's move to round 11. During Q3, Hamilton is instructed by his team to let Alonso through, but he refuses, which makes Alonso furious. After their first flying laps of Q3, both of them pit for flesh rubber. Alonso is first to enter the pits while Lewis is in queue, and after the lollipop is raised, Alonso doesn't move for another 10 seconds.
Alonso out. Yep, they want him out of there. No, Alonso's not getting on with it. Only a minute and 40 to go. Is he blocking Hamilton here? Is that a bit of a tactic within the team there to give Hamilton a bit of that?
With this, Lewis was not able to cross the line for another Q3 run, while Alonso takes pole.
Always stop. We wait for the countdown in the radio and we go. Sometimes it's 10 seconds, sometimes 45 seconds like the first stop of today. Sometimes 10 or 15 like the second, but I think the calculation was wrong because my teammate didn't complete the lap and I crossed the line with 2 or 3 seconds. So it was really tight, and these things unfortunately happen today.
But the FIA did not like the excuse and hands Alonso a 5-place grid penalty, which means Lewis gets the pole. On race day, Lewis wins, while Kimi is second and Alonso could only manage a 4th. Now the relationship between Alonso and the team went from a small crack to a big dent. Okay, let's skip Turkey where Felipe wins leading Kimi, so it's a Ferrari 1-2, and Monza where Fernando wins leading Lewis, so it's a McLaren 1-2, and Spa where Kimi wins leading Felipe, so it's a Ferrari 1-2 again. Also, when we arrive in Spa, McLaren are found guilty for the Spygate scandal and is fined with 100 million along with disqualifications in the Constructors' Championship. So with this, in Spa, Ferrari wins the 2007 Constructors, but for the two McLaren drivers, they are still allowed to participate in the Drivers' Championship. On race day, the FIA insists all teams to start on wet tyres, but Ferrari claims that they did not receive the message and sent their drivers with intermediates. But when the race began behind the safety car, Massa spins and loses a place and proceeds to take it back illegally, handing himself a drive-through penalty. Kimi pits to change his tyre for wets but ends up spinning and finds himself last. After 20 laps, when the safety car comes in, Hamilton leads. Alonso pits to try and undercut Hamilton but slides wide with his cold new tyres. But when Hamilton emerges from his top, 5 cars split the two McLarens. But Alonso's tragedy doesn't end there. He cannot find a dry line and then he crashes. When the safety car comes in, Hamilton takes the win and the crucial 10 points, while Kimi being third means that he is still in the championship hunt, but his teammate Massa is out. Lewis arrives in the penultimate round with a 10-point lead. Hamilton can lose 2 points to Alonso or 7 to Kimi and still be crowned champion before the final race in Interlagos. And after taking pole in qualifying, it looks like he is indeed set to become the first ever rookie to become a world champion. He leads the pack and the rain begins. Lewis and Kimi come into the pits. The laps count down and Lewis loses grip, and after few laps, Lewis slides wide and Kimi goes into the lead. But P2 is still okay for Lewis to win the championship, but his tyres have worn out and he enters the pit lane.
Anyway, comes Lewis Hamilton. He goes straight on into the gravel trap. Can he keep the wheels spinning? Can he get some momentum going? No, he can't. It's all going to get away from him. He's not allowed to get a push. He's in the pit lane. He's trying to keep the engine running. It's all getting away from him here. Raikkonen. The marshals don't seem to want to help him.
But Lewis is stuck, marking his first ever DNF in Formula 1. But no matter how the race evolves, Lewis will still lead the championship, and Kimi takes the race win, while Alonso in second. And now we go to the last round.
Welcome to Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Sitting in pole, it's neither of the three championship contenders, but the home hero, Felipe Massa. But Ferrari will let Kimi through if chances prevail that Kimi can win the championship. But the same cannot be said for the McLaren team. They have a steward in their garage to monitor that no driver is favoured over the other.
This is the moment when Lewis Hamilton's life could change forever, when Fernando Alonso could become a triple world champion, or where Kimi Raikkonen, after 2 years of finishing runner-up, could win his first Formula 1 world title. The 21 cars are lined up. Racing here at Interlagos, and a great start for Felipe Massa, and Kimi Raikkonen's got ahead of Lewis Hamilton going into the first corner. Lewis Hamilton stays out of trouble, but Raikkonen's got up into second place. Fernando Alonso alongside Lewis Hamilton going round the second corner.
Lewis needs a P5 to win the championship, and he fights his way back to climb the field. But in the back straight of the circuit, Lewis has incurred a gearbox issue and is in neutral. He starts working his way up the field again. He makes a lot of overtakes and is also helped by DNF. And when truly pits, Hamilton is running P7. Meanwhile, Alonso is pushing as hard as he can but cannot match the pace of the Ferraris. But with Kimi stuck behind Massa, Fernando would be crowned world champion. Massa pits from the lead and finds himself in traffic. And 3 laps later, when Kimi pits, he comes out leading. And towards the ending stages of the race, Hamilton is P7, Fernando in P3 and Kimi in P1.
Brazilian Grand Prix. His first victory here, the 15th of his career, and by no doubt the most important.
It's all over. Hamilton 7. Hamilton 7. By my calculations, we win the championship by 1 point.
But hey, we do know what happens next season, right?
Take off the foo-foo, take off the cloud chase, take off the Wi-Fi, take off the money phone, take off the car loan, take off the flex and the white loss, take off the weird-ass jewelry, I'ma take 10 steps, then I'm taking off top 5. Take off them fabricated streams and the microwave memes, it's a real world outside.